if you go back and listen to the previous episode, I mentioned that it's important to not wait until you're rock bottoms to make certain decisions. You don't have to. You don't have to wait until, you know, you're 82 pounds at the age of 19 and your blood level is at 2 for you to decide that you got to go do something different. You don't have to wait until your ribs got broken by that guy that you call your significant other and your children saw it before you decide to make some decisions that you got to make some changes in your life. This is Shayla Renee, and welcome back to another episode of Take Back Your Life Conversations with Shay, where we help women who are ready to turn the corner from past trauma and drama to overcome toxic thoughts, feelings, people, and situations through a closer relationship with Christ. Welcome back. As they say, welcome back. Anywho, if you're a returning viewer or listener, thank you for your continued support. If you are new to this channel, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you will be notified when we drop new content, which we do weekly. So today we're going to continue on talking about the process of change or recovery. If you viewed our last video or if you viewed our last episode, you would have heard the first two stages in the process of change, which are the pre-contemplation and the contemplation stages. And just for a quick overview, the pre-contemplation stage is someone who's going through life where they are in some sort of toxicity or they need to address some change in their life, but they're ignoring it. They are unaware they need to change or they ignore that change is necessary. And moving on from that stage is the contemplation stage where you are very aware that you need to make some changes, but you're still trying to figure out uh, if the change is worth the commitment that's necessary to make these changes or to live more free or to go through the recovery process, because change is hard. We know that and we recognize that. So from the contemplation stage, where you're doing exactly that, you're contemplating whether or not you're going to make necessary changes or if you're willing to make the commitment to these changes. The next stage following that, moving on from that stage, is the preparation stage. So the preparation stage, this is a stage where you weigh the cost and you've decided that it is worth it to start making some changes in your life. This is like my favorite part. This is like my favorite stage when I'm coaching someone. Like, I love this stage because I always talk about how change starts with a decision. And this is the stage where you are making that decision to change. As simple as that. And as a Christian life coach, the preparation stage is probably my favorite stage because I'm all about decision making. Like, the decision making stage is where uh, I get all in my feels. It's where I can actually step in and help someone move towards change because you've made the decision. You're no longer contemplating the change and you're no longer ignoring that you need to make some changes in your life. You're actually making a decision that you're going to uh, put forth action towards change. And this is where I can step in and help. See, the other two phases, especially pre-contemplation, is not much I can do. I'm not able to come into your life and tell you that you need to make some changes when you're unaware that your life is a wreck or you're ignoring some things. you're not going to put forth the effort towards change. And once you move towards the next step, which is contemplation, you're still trying to make, you're still trying to decide if it's even worth changing. You're trying to decide if it's worth looking into better employment because you're being treated poorly at your job. Is it worth it? Because yeah, you're being treated terribly, but you know the job in and out. You can go to work, you can do it in your sleep. And if you want to go towards a better job or a job where you're at least respected and maybe the pay scale may be a little better, you got to put some work behind that. You got to you got to update your resume. You got to go on all the job searching apps out there to apply for hundreds of jobs where you may get, one reply where they say, we're moving on to another candidate who better fits the job description. And you got to deal with all the hurt that may come with the rejection that you're going to get when you decide that you want to do something better for your life, right? So change, that commitment towards change is not an easy step to take, but I love it. And I love it because I've been in the trenches and I've been, you know, uh, I lived a life where I was unaware that I needed to make some changes, or I didn't want to put in the work to make some changes in my own life. And I know how free I felt after I started making some changes, after I made that. It's the decision to make the change freed me. And then I continued to become more and more free as I made those steps towards change. It's funny because people look at me sometimes, and it's weird. It's very weird. I talk to people, and um, I'm trying to mentor them or coach them along some area in their life, and I come to this roadblock oftentimes with my clients. Not all of them, but some of them, because they look at my life now and they think that everything is all daffodils and roses. And they're unable to relate to anything that I'm telling them because they see the after effect of deciding to make a change and putting those changes into play, right? It's unfortunate because I am not able to see a better life for you. You have to see a better life for yourself. And if you catch me in this phase in life, in my 40s when I'm married and with a child, and if you're looking at my now and you're judging me for where I am now, you may be disappointed if you're looking at your current situation. And this is just from what you're seeing on the outside. You don't know what's going on internally with me. You just see something that looks like it's polished, but it looks this way because I put in work to get here, right? Like me and my husband, we work on our marriage most of the time. So when you see us in the street, we're not arguing and we're not bitter and we're not fighting each other, because that's not something that people need to see. First of all, that's not a good example of Christ's marriage to the church. And this is weird because my husband's sitting right here. Anywho, so if you see the polished version now, it's going to be hard for you to make a decision to change. And if you don't want to put in the work and you see someone who, like myself, who has put in the work to make some changes in life, then you're going to be defeated before you even started. I'm not saying my life is all, dandelions and roses and everything's all good. But if you have just met me in these later years in my life, you don't know all the toxic stuff that I had uh, to to get rid of to become the person that I am today. And I'm still evolving into a better person each and every single day, right? So this is not, I've made it and I'm perfect. But if you're looking at me now, married with a child, and we have a healthy marriage, and and we have a roof over our heads, and we have some kind of common sense from the outside looking in, that's distracting to someone who is contemplating on making some changes because they don't feel like they have it all together enough to change. And no one has it all together enough to change, right? So don't be distracted by what you see someone else or how you view someone else, because we're all we all come from mud, and we're trying to move forward in life. But once you hit that decision making stage, it's a decision that you make on your own. It's not me coming in telling you that you need to make some changes because your life is a wreck. It's you recognizing that your life is a wreck, and you are willing to put forth the effort to make some changes in your life. That's why life coaches love this stage. This is why I love this stage, because it's not me forcing my goals for your life on you. It's you coming up with your own goals in life. So here's the thing. If you viewed my last video, or if you listened to the last episode on the podcast, I talk about my debilitating illness that I had from childhood, right? So we talked about in the previous episode the pre-contemplation stage of my illness and the contemplation stage. And if we look to the next stage, if we're talking about the preparation stage, and if we're going to use my illness as an analogy, so we had to make a decision. Are we going to continue to do the same thing, which was going to the same doctors that I've had my entire life, who knew me inside and out? Literally, they knew me inside and out. Or going to the same hospital and being given the same treatments, and not getting any better? Or are we going to do something different? Now, this happened really quickly. Like, we moved from the contemplation stage of should we do something different to the preparation / decision making stage, which we did do something different, but it happened in one fell swoop almost. It was so quick. It happened so quickly because I was literally dying. As a matter of fact, made it to when I made it to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, they told me if had I stayed home one more week, I most likely would have succumbed to my illness. I was 82 pounds at the age of 19, and I had my blood level was 2. So I was on the edge of meeting our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So we had to make this decision quickly. We had to move quickly from contemplation to preparation. But when we moved to that prep stage, this is what's so important. We had to figure out the best direction to go. We had to figure out the next move. We didn't just do this without putting some thought behind who would be able to provide the best care for me. So when it was decided to take me to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, it was because of the many different specialists they had, who were at the top of their fields in most cases. Like, my specialist, my GI doctor, who I eventually met really quickly, and who eventually took on my case, was at the top of his field. He was an expert in the field, in contrast to my my GI doctor, who I grew up with, who knew me, who was a specialist, but he wasn't a top expert in the field. Had he been an expert, I don't think the disease would have taken over the way it took over. But this decision came after, like I said, I was severely ill. And if you go back and listen to the previous episode, I mentioned that it's important to not wait until you're rock bottoms to make certain decisions. You don't have to. You don't have to wait until, you know, you're 82 pounds at the age of 19 and your blood level is at 2 for you to decide that you got to go do something different. You don't have to wait until your ribs got broken by that guy that you call your significant other and your children saw it before you decide to make some decisions that you got to make some changes in your life. You don't have to wait until your group of friends who you hang with and y'all go out and y'all party and drink and there's no designated driver. You don't have to wait until you crash your car and now the police are involved and now you may have a record to decide that you want to make some changes in your life. Like it doesn't have to be dire situations for you to decide that you need to make some changes. But many of us wait until we've hit these several rock bottoms before we decide that we need to make some changes because we ignore everything. We ignore all the signs that there's some toxicity in our lives and that stuff needs to be uprooted. I talk about it often in my book, He Almost Stole My Life, about how we're so comfortable living in that toxicity that we ignore all the downsides of it. We ignore that we got to put makeup on to cover up the black eyes that we got from this guy who claims he loves us, right? We ignore the feelings that we feel every Sunday walking out of the church because no one in there understands you or they treat you poorly because of your lifestyle or your upbringing or you grew up on the other side of the tracks. We ignore that we have like people who are our best friends, that they are like, our ride or die. But we're not going to leave our boyfriend around them. We won't leave our husband around them by themselves because we don't trust what they might do. We ignore all those feelings that we have or all those signs that we are given often that some changes need to be made until we hit dire situations, until we hit rock bottoms, and we don't have to wait that long. We shouldn't wait that long because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to take for you to make these changes. I'm going to have a video about rock bottoms or an episode that talks about rock bottoms soon because I think it's an important subject, but that's not what this episode is about. This episode is about deciding that we need to make some changes in our lives. So here's the thing about decision making. Well, there's a few things about decision making. I'm going to dissect one right now. Your environment is everything. I often I mentioned in my book, shameless plug, about our decisions to change shouldn't be emotional. And if you want to take a deep dive into that, you go ahead and grab yourself a copy. But right now, I want to talk about assessing the environment that we are in when we're trying to make a decision. So I'm reading a book titled The Struggle is Real. And the book is a collaboration from a bunch of therapists and psychotherapists and counselors who work together. They also are Christian. And in this book, they go through the different types of mental illnesses and how to counsel some people who may be experiencing these illnesses and whatnot. And one story stuck out specifically for me is a story about a woman who was suffering from OCD. And if you don't know what OCD is, it stands for obsessive compulsive disorder. This woman who suffered from this disease for most of her life, she recognized that she needed to make a decision in order to get help. She traveled internationally to the United States to go to a clinic, a 3-week intensive clinic that involved a bunch of different counselors and therapists and psychotherapists who eventually helped her get a hold of her disease through counseling, therapy, and medication. She left that 3-week intensive, feeling free. She was free from the compulsions that were controlling her life. She was happy. She had joy. She could see her life outside of this disease and no longer had that control over her, through intensive therapy, intensive counseling, and through medication from the right people. She became a different person. And she went back home. She went back to her environment that she came from, where she was a Christian, and her church was somewhat legalistic. And that's the environment she came from. She goes back feeling free, back to that environment. And they told her, because they were a little misinformed, because as many Christian congregations are when it comes to mental illnesses and spirituality, they basically told her to stop taking her medication for her OCD. And prior to her getting this help, she suffered from suicidal thoughts, but she could never commit the act because she believed it was a sin. So it was a struggle every day for this young lady. And she walks back into that environment of oppression because they have a limited understanding of what mental illness is. And they basically told her that everything she was experiencing was a spiritual attack to her, and that she needed to stop taking the medication, stop going to therapy, and pretty much pray her disease away. And I am a Jesus loving follower of Christ. I believe prayer works. I've seen prayer manifested in my life several times, uh, throughout throughout my life. So I'll never poo-poo prayer. But what I will also never do is not heed the advice from someone who is professional and who has experience in certain fields. And if they're saying that medication is going to help you, take the medicine. If they're saying counseling is going to help you, go to counseling. If I had stayed home because I didn't believe in modern doctors, if I did because I didn't believe in modern medicine when I was sick, and I believed that ginger ale and chicken noodle soup was going to heal my illness, I would have died. I don't understand why. Why do we believe in modern medicine when it comes to physical illnesses and not mental illnesses? That is a tangent that I went on. I apologize because the story hurt my heart reading, so it hurt because I know this happens often, too many times than none, that you go into a well-meaning church, I guess, and they tell you that the only remedy to your issues is to pray everything away. And without any other, there's no accountability for yourself. You don't, that's taking everything off of things that you can do to better yourself and just putting it all onto prayer. This story hurt, so it hurt to my core because this young lady who was living in bondage for most of her life goes to an intensive, becomes free, goes back to her environment. They tell her something that they're misinformed, and she eventually takes her own life. She could no longer live with her OCD because they didn't understand the mental illness or the mental struggle that she was going through. And that's why it's so important for you that when you make a decision, you are aware of your environments. If I'm going to tell you that I'm no longer drinking, but I'll go hang with you at this sports bar, How long do you think it's going to take for me to order a drink? Not very long. I mean, some of us are strong and can go into a bar and not drink if we have an alcohol problem, but not many of us could. Environment is everything. Your household. How many times have you tried to change your eating habits, but no one else in your house has? And everyone buys snack food, they buy all these heavy carbs. And here you're trying to eat like a rabbit, but your loved one's eating chicken and dumplings. And you know that that goes against the way that you're trying to, your diet, the way that you're trying to uh, make some, it goes against the changes that you're trying to make in your life. Your environment, your external environment matters when it comes to you deciding to make some changes. But that's not the only type of environment that matters. Your internal environment matters probably more than your external environment. Because if we don't have our inside right, if we don't have our relationship with God right, our external environment is going to control what happens internally. It's going to control how we feel every single day. It's going to cause us to go into seasonal depressions. It's going to cause us to stay in a relationship that's toxic because we don't have it all together inside, internally. Like we have no relationship with Christ. We're not even able to reach the hem of his garment because where is he? It's funny how blind men in the Bible could find Christ, but we go through some stuff in life. It's like, where is he? We're so far from him that even his hem is unreachable. And this is where this ties into the woman in the story that I just talked about. I'm not saying that she did not believe in Christ, but her external environment told her something that she wasn't strong enough to withstand. Her spiritual mentors were basically telling her that what she believed in Christ and her freedom was wrong. That when she was freed from her compulsions, she goes back to her home and her environment, back to the people who were not fortifying her internal environment. They were influencing her from the outside in, not the inside out. And their misdirection or their misguidance, and not that it said, no, I'm not saying that it was ill intended. It just was really bad guidance from spiritual teachers. So this is why it's so important for you to go to the right people or go to the right specialist in order to help you make some changes in your life. And not only that, most importantly, you need to work on your internal environment, your internal influences. And to boil that down in a nutshell is your relationship with Christ and your walk with Christ. So in wrapping up this episode, I want you to think about 3 to 5 major decisions you've made recently. Number 1, what was that decision? Or what were those decisions that you had to make? Number 2, when you made those decisions, what patterns did you notice? Did they stem from dire circumstances? Were they purely emotional decisions? Were they made from external influences versus internal? Were you sober-minded when you make these decisions? What patterns do you notice, or what do they have in common? of how you make these decisions. And finally, what can you do to change both your internal and external environments in which you're making decisions? 3 hacks for you to assess this. Go back to the previous episode on the process of change, where we talked about assessing how much time you spend watching, binging Netflix, how much time you spend with certain groups of people. All those things dictate your external environments that lead to your decision making. So if you haven't checked out the previous episode, you may want to go back and do so to get a better idea of what we talk about when we say assess your environment. And also in my book, He Almost Stole My Life, I talk about good decision-making processes that are not based off of your emotions, but are sober-minded. In order for them, for your decisions to actually stick, for you to not go back and revert back to some old habits that you may have developed over the years. So if you haven't read it yet, I suggest you go grab a copy. We'll put a link in here somewhere, or you can grab it from my website that talks about this in more detail. And of course, if you need more help, or if you're ready, if you've moved from that contemplation stage and you're moving on to that preparation stage, we have coaching services available to you, so you can reach out for that. So that's going to do it for this episode. Just to recap, we talked about the importance of decision making and how your environment, both internal and external, influence your decision making processes. And also, you do not have to wait until you hit rock bottoms before you decide that you want to be a better version of yourself. So that's going to do it for me. This is Shayla Renee with Take Back Your Life, where we help women overcome toxicity, plain and simple. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you have not done so, and share this video with someone that you think may receive some help from it. Until next episode, I will see you.